Major funding for the following program was provided by Chrysler. Additional funding was provided by the Wyndham Chicago Hotel, AT&T Broadband, ComEd and Exelon Company, American Airlines, Walgreens, the Chicago Tribune, Ronald McDonald House Charities, and Veranda L. Dickens. An enduring couple, both on and off the stage. Actors, writers, and above all, activists. They are Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. National treasures, their lives committed to the struggle. The History Makers is proud to present An Evening with Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. And now to our host, teacher, author, and well-known activist, Angela Davis.
Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee have literally shaped the world we inhabit today. They have made it a better place for all of us. Through their art and through their activism, they have never let us forget that we all have a deep moral responsibility to continue to insist on freedom for every person on this earth.
He is an actor, writer, and director. She, an award-winning actress and writer. Both are collaborators, activists, stars of stage and screen, and an inspiration to us all.
Please give a warm round of applause for Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. Our lives have intersected time and time and time again.
Yes.
And if you'll forgive me, I want to start on a personal note, because I never asked you to tell me the story about how you became involved in the campaign for my freedom.
Oh, that's right. You know, I really, you please start, Ossie. I don't remember. The campaign started, you know, we had 3 Davises. What are we going to tell you? Who knows?
In the course of our involvement, I think Dick Gregory and I had been appointed chairman of a committee to defend the Panthers, and one thing led to another. I was involved with people who were friends of mine, who were friends of yours also. And it was they who suggested that perhaps Rube and I should be further involved in your affairs as they came along. Esther Jackson, Jim Jackson, William L. Patterson, Louise Patterson, various other people. And as part of the continuing struggle, we didn't know you personally at the time, but you were a part of what was happening.
But I knew you.
Yeah, you were a part of what was happening. You were a part of those young people who were on the front lines and really being exterminated by the FBI, a campaign to destroy, a real campaign to destroy the young people who had assumed some leadership role in our society was underway. And this was our way of participating and being of help. So I was asked to do what I do rather well. I was made the head of the committee and then told to sit down, and so somebody else would do all the work. And it turned out that that was the case. And one of the most ardent workers in your behalf was your own mother. She was so wonderful. So I knew your mother much better than I ever knew you. But you were, to us, one of the causes that we held dear. Ruby and I have children. and we consider particularly the young people involved in the struggle that we have an obligation to them. And when you came along, it was a natural step for us to take to say, well, if you're going to come and get that Davis, you might as well line up the rest of us, because we're...
And Ossie, do you remember we had a fundraiser at our house?
Yes.
And as luck would have it, we got a job and we couldn't be there.
You couldn't be there.
No, I couldn't be there, yes.
Angela couldn't be there either for reasons which, you know. We had a ball, we raised funds, and, you know, contributed to the cause. But one of the most important things we've ever done was to be involved in that particular phase of the struggle with you. We're very proud of that.
Well, I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And Ossie, was that the time, one of the nights at Carnegie Hall, when they had the bulletproof, you were surrounded by bulletproof protection? Or am I mixing things up?
No, you're not mixing things up. When the struggle had reached a certain phase, and Angela, you know, had been set free, and was free to go, there was a big rally at Madison Square Garden, you know, for her, and the place was packed. And I was the master of ceremonies, but I had to do my mastering inside a glass bulletproof cage, you know. But you remember that?
I absolutely.
But it was part of the madness of the times.
Yeah.
You know, we went well, and I thought I looked pretty good in that glass cage.
Okay, let's get back to your story. Let's get back to the reason we're here. We want to talk about your lives. And we're asking you to tell the story of your lives together. For most of us, where there's Ossie, there's Ruby. Where there's Ruby, there's Ossie.
Some of it.
But I know there was a time when you were not a couple, when you were not together. And as a matter of fact, you came from rather different backgrounds. So let's, talk about...
Ruby, you're an expert on that.
Well, to an extent, the assault on black people was pronounced. And so our values was similar, although we came from different parts of the country. We both came from the struggle. You know, I don't know any other way. How do people be if they don't be from the struggle, you know? Because that's how much you come from it. I remember we wrote it, I wrote it in my book, thank God. I think everybody needs to write a book so you can really try to remember what happened. And I remember my first thoughts, I was slow thinking, as getting around to the thinking part of it, but had to do with struggles and pickets and police and people getting beat in the street and furniture on the sidewalk, getting rained on, and somebody going up the street on 7th Avenue where I lived and shooting themselves, and of rumors, and having rumors in your house, borders, so that you could pay the rent. And don't buy when you can't work, don't buy where you can't work. So I mean, these are my first thoughts, like imagine happy babies, remember if they could think back, the joy and tickling and all that, and being children. But this is what I remember, and pictures that shocked my sensibilities when I was like 4 and 5 years old. I don't think I deserve any credit for anything, you understand, because I didn't know any other way to be. I remember street corners and pickets and parades, you understand? So that's what I got teethed on.
Well, when I came into the struggle, and you want to applaud Ruby? But consider my situation. Fresh out of the Army, got my first acting job, and then I know that was a part of the struggle because black folks had not at that time been fully accepted downtown. So I jump into the struggle, and guess who's one of the first people I meet struggling alongside of me? Ruby Dee. That made the struggle all the more exciting.
Oh my goodness.
And as Ruby said, we were on the same wavelength. But that is not surprising, because when we came into the theater, there were luminaries out there who helped define who we were, what our objective should be. Paul Robeson.
Oh, yes.
I think there's a clip coming up.
A clip coming up.
Yes.
Probably do it better than we. Clip on.
Let's look at it.
For Ossie Davis, introduction to the theater occurred in the 1930s at Howard University, where he was introduced to the singing of Marian Anderson and the works of Langston Hughes, Count T. Cullen, and Sterling Brown, who was his teacher. But it was Alan Locke, the nation's first black Rhodes Scholar, who introduced Ossie to the richness and culture of the theater, steering him from black vaudeville to New York's Rose McClendon Players. After graduating from Hunter High School, Ruby attended Hunter College. Her interest in theater was strong, and she showed promise early on. Performances in the American Negro Theater followed. Ossie would be drafted into the Army and stationed in Liberia, West Africa. After 3 years, Davis would return and coincidentally was asked to play a part about a black veteran returning from the war. It was here in a play called Jeb that Ruby and Ossie would meet.
Can we talk for a moment about Jeb?
About Jeb. Well, that was a strange time, because when I met Ossie and Jeb, I mean, I really didn't like him. I thought he was a very peculiar looking person. He was about as big as a string bean, and and he had this Adam's apple that sort of stuck out. He was strictly from the country. I mean, this is the first time I'd seen, a picture of things that you'd read about. This tall guy, with sleeves that on his shirts that came in the middle of his arm, and the pants came nowhere near his ankles, And he was this tall, skinny man dressed, in the well-worn apparel of a short, fat man. And his understudy and I used to sit in the theater and we would talk about him. And we would say, well, where did he get his clothes? And Bill Marshall was Ossie's understudy. And I remember Bill said, well, he probably got him, from the, it was
Goodwill.
The good from Goodwill. And he said, things like that, remarks we would make about him. But I do remember one day, and you can stop me. That he was on stage, and I write about this in the book too. And he played the part of a returning soldier, and in the play Jeb by Robert Audrey. And at one point, he stood on the tie, slowly, deliberately tying his tie in his soldier's uniform. And I remember sitting with Bill in the audience and looking up at him, and something very peculiar happened, because I hadn't been thinking about him in any particular way, and I had no romantic notions about him. But as I watched him, I felt something like a bolt of lightning. And, an electrical charge, flashed between us. And I was so shocked. I never felt anything like that before. And I thought that was such a corny thing for me to be feeling. It was so strange, because I really didn't even like him.
And you were from New York, right?
Yeah, I don't know what that had to do with it, or what. I don't know. We agreed he was a good actor, but I do remember that sometime later, I told him about this strange sensation I had as he was working because I was curious to know if he felt anything. I mean, it was such a powerful thing, you know. And he says, no, Ruby, I didn't feel a thing. And I was shocked. but we married anyway, you know.
So, Ossie, perhaps you can tell your side of the story.
Everybody referred
goodness.
to me as country because of my peculiar clothes. I was aware of that. And look which one out of them all that Ruby married. I knew what I was doing when I put on them bad-looking clothes. You got to make the woman feel sorry for you, you know. So I looked so bad that Ruby took me as a life's occupation.
And so you were married in 1948.
Yes.
1948.
In 1948. We were both working in a play, and we had one Thursday off, I believe. Mm-hmm. So we hopped on a bus and a subway and went to New Jersey. And we found a minister, and we got married. And Ruby's sister was her best lady, and I had my brother with me. I had borrowed the train fare from my brother, so he was coming along. That's his investment. But there we stood, you know, in the preacher's, what is it, rectory, wherever the preacher, and the preacher was a sort of a round man. He was extended this way and that way, and he had two eyes, and they were sort of fickle one to the other. One eye went that way, one eye went that way. So I was standing before him, and he looked at me very seriously, and he looked on the things. Ossie Davis, do you take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife? And I looked. One of the eyes was on Ruby. The other eye was on Ruby's sister, and she was a good-looking child. So I said, yeah, quick, you know, 2 for the price of 1. But we did marry, and we came home, and when we got around to it, we started a family and a life, and it's sort of been going on ever since.
Yes.
You agree?
Yes, and
So talk about some of the people who were around during that period in your lives. I know you were very close to Harry Belafonte.
Harry was a member of also the American Negro Theater. He and Sidney came along a little after I joined, and that was a time for all of us, you know. I don't think, at least the people in the theater, it wasn't an indifferent time. I do remember, I don't have one of those memories that soaks everything up, like Ossie, you know. He remembers things that happened in 1901. You know? No, not really. But, you know, he remembers these, you know, long times past, or he just knows about them. And he reads a lot, too, so he really educated both of us. But we came from a time when, before unions were, the unions were solid, I remember Harry and so many, name some of the people, and Marlon Brando Sidney was so many people that you don't know now, Avon Long, and I remember all those kinds of people, mostly from people's houses where we would be gathered raising funds for one thing or another, and a little earlier than that where we would be helping somebody pay rent, because that was before a lot of the things before the union funds were heavy, and also the poll tax was up for there and up around that time. And the anti-lynching laws, I don't know whether they had been passed or not.
No.
Yes, and so all of that was part of that part of that movement. And you see all kinds of people, actors, singers, musicians come to Harlem. There'd be something at somebody's house most every weekend, and especially if you were in a show. And if you weren't, you just gravitate there anyway. There was a coming together around the issues, is what I'm trying to say. And that I found so stimulating. Not at the time, because at the time it seemed just like what you're supposed to do. You know, it only as I look back on it did I realize how remarkable and how wonderful a time that was.
It was a special moment for the theater on Broadway. Paul Robeson was there, as we
Yes.
said, Lena Horne, you know, and Canada Lee, and they took a leadership position. But consider for a moment what the times were like. We who had fought in World War II fought with the expectation that the country was going to change its policy toward black folks. But when we got back home, we found that the country had no intention of changing its policy and went out of its way to let us know in many ways that that was not going to happen. There were certain cases where veterans were in serious trouble. Young man, Isaac Woodard, down in Carolina, you know, had his eyes gouged out while he was still in uniform on a bus. You know, two veterans in Monroe, Georgia, walking with their wives along a road in uniform, shot down by the Ku Klux Klan. A young man, Mapes, trying to vote in Georgia, you know, killed. And so the theater was always concerned about these things. And as Ruby said, every night somebody would suggest a party somewhere. Rosalie Ingram, whose sons had killed a white man because the white man had molested her, you know, and various other causes. Somebody being tried, somebody being lynched, or somebody being put on the chain gang. And we would meet to raise funds. Paul Robeson would be there, and Orson Welles, and members of the theater. The theater took itself quite seriously.
But many of them felt the awful consequences of McCarthyism.
Oh, yes. But you see,
That was a little bit later on.
When I listened to your amazing story, but I'm told there's another clip coming
I
up.
see. Okay.
So.
The clips have it. Let's have the clips.
You can't eclipse the clips.
The McCarthy period devastated many in Hollywood and the rest of the creative community. Paul Robeson, the Rosenbergs, and scores of others were caught up in a dragnet of suspicion, and yet the 50s were the decade of the Montgomery bus boycott, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King. The 60s would usher in a time of change, the March on Washington, the rise and fall of Malcolm X, and the assassination of Martin Luther King. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee's lives as activists were intertwined with their careers as artists. They joined the casts of the Jackie Robinson Story, the Broadway production of Green Pastures, the musical Jamaica, and last but not least, Lorraine Hansberry's Raisin in the Sun.
This is my time in life. My time. To say goodbye to these old, tired walls. These marching cockroaches. And this cramped little closet which ain't now and never was no kitchen. Then I say it loud and good. Hallelujah. Goodbye, misery. I'll never want to see your ugly face.
I think about all those people who came out of Hollywood And that was the first time in my life where it was solidly wedded the struggle and the arts, you know. And there were a lot of Jewish people who came from Hollywood. I'm still trying to put those things in perspective because they help. They added pieces to the puzzle. They spoke to artistic responsibility, personal responsibility, the people's part in struggle, and they really gave us things to think about. I got involved in a deeper level because of the Rosenbergs, and also
the defense of Paul Robeson.
And the defense of Paul Robeson and all those kinds of things.
I think the McCarthy period is too important to gloss over, because I'd like to go back a little bit. As I said before, in the theater community, we were very active in trying to secure the rights of African Americans after World War II. Not only were we involved in that, but we took a serious look at all the issues in the world. I remember having a big rally at Madison Square Garden where the theatrical community took it upon itself to tell the United States government that we had no right to have access to the atom bomb on our own. We should share the knowledge with the rest of the world. And not only that, we took a strong stand on building a United Nations as an instrument against war. And Robeson was particularly eloquent about the denial of freedom for the African continent. You know, the World War II was for the Africans also a fight against colonialism. So all of these fights were there, and all of us we were there, and we were on the streets, and we were doing marvelous things. And that is one of the reasons why the committees came to deliberately cut us down. We were the object of their ire, and they determined that those actors and Paul Robeson and those people were not going to influence government policy. What America did to the colonies in Africa was none of the actors' business. What America did about not passing an anti-lynch law was none of the actors' business. We were supposed to be like children, do the plays, go home, and forget about it. And those of us who didn't, they put on a list, and they came and they subpoenaed us, and they made us stand trial and to defend ourselves as if we were traitors. But there was a pattern to what they did, and they succeeded in cutting much of the manhood out of Broadway and Hollywood. And that's true to this day. And so the struggle for Paul's passport was for the actors, also a part of our trying to vindicate ourselves, to support him, but also to support our own struggle. Now, Paul had to fight about 8 years to get his passport, you know, and they succeeded in separating Paul, in a sense, from the mainline struggle. Not because Paul was not involved in the mainline struggle, but he also became a cause. Getting him his passport became a movement of its own. Well, that split him and his group off from the middle class black members of the NAACP who were trying, and the Urban League, and a lot of us who thought we could work with the Congress and with the president to get the anti-lynching law passed, you know. But all of this is a sign of the kind of world that it was out there, and a kind of life that we lived, Rube and I, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for somebody to say there's going to be a meeting, or somebody says we need somebody to raise funds, we need somebody to be the master of ceremonies, we need somebody to do this or to do that. Ruby, you and Ossie, you can do it, so please come and do it. We consider that our serious responsibility, and we always tried, whenever the leadership called, other groups, to do that job. And as the leadership matured and changed, and people like Dr. King came on the scene and Malcolm X came on the scene, Ruby and Ossie were still pretty much in the same position. You know, pass out the leaflets, raise the funds, make the speech, do the MC, all of those various things. And to this, and we still do it.
You had a relationship with Dr. King.
Yes.
But you also had a relationship with Malcolm X.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
so let's talk about that.
Yes, Malcolm.
Well, we were able, part of it through longevity, part of it having been because we were in the struggle for such a long time, to see how the various threads of the black experience, knit themselves together. And we could understand historically where Dr. King might be coming from as he preached integration.
Yes.
And his middle class background, his Southern background. We could also understand Malcolm from the black nationalist perspective, where he came from, speaking eloquently to the streets of the North. But we understood that they both were part of the same struggle. And Ruby and Juanita Poitier arranged a get-together meeting one Saturday at which Malcolm was invited, Martin was invited, and the black leadership invited, and they came to that meeting for the purpose of discussing ways by which to get together. That was in February of 1965. In 2 weeks, Malcolm was dead. So none of that ever happened. Yes. But it was a part of what we were trying to do, to pull them together, because it was the struggle that was important. It was the fact that they related to our needs that was important, not what surface differences that they might have had. We felt that way about it.
I remember when we first had a party for Malcolm, and we invited so many people, in the arts, everybody we knew, to meet Malcolm. My brother had introduced us to him. One day, I'd love to tell you about that sometime, because he changed my brother's life. At any rate, we weren't taking pictures. Malcolm came to the house with his gun and with that shotguns, road shotgun, in the Jeeps, in the back windows and stuff like that. But when he came, I told him he could have to please. I had to have the cameras and stuff, so I put those in the bedroom because I didn't want anybody to get nervous. Oh God, I think about it now, and I missed all those pictures. And because I was intimidated too. This is what I'm saying. And now that I'm older, I feel that I'm no longer intimidated. I feel now I'm old enough to do anything I damn well please. And I think, And this is why I feel that there's hope for this country. We have much to protect. We have greatness in this country, and we can't throw it away like toilet paper. We can't ignore these things. And so I'm thinking now, we have to get back. We have to get back. We have to get the thieves out of the saddle, and so our young people. So those 65 and older, I don't know where that army's coming from, but for 65 and older, we have a few brain cells left, a few dollars in the bank. It's time to make a time again. We can't go down the sinkhole behind those people who are not worthy of the virtues that this country still represents. We've got to save them.
I would like to say a word or two about the children. They may be watching. What we did, and I don't know whether it was because we were wise or because we were broke and couldn't afford babysitters, but we would take the children everywhere we went, so they were part of the struggle too. They walked picket lines, and handed out leaflets. They were always involved. They never had to ask, where is daddy and mommy? And when they were growing up, we got all the kids together and said, this is the first time we've been parents. We don't know how it works, but this is the way it's going to work from here on in. Now, we're not going to allow you to do anything out in the world that you cannot do in this house. We may hate it, but you're going to do it here or you won't do it out there. The one thing that we're going to abide by, one law, nobody can fall out. Nobody can leave. Nobody can quit. You know, you are still a part of the family. We belong together. We belong to each other. And that's the way it's going to be. And somehow that resolved whatever differences they might have had. And they have been ardent members of the struggle. We've had no trouble with them as children ever since that time, you know. And
we walked the picket lines with us.
Yes.
And our oldest, our youngest daughter, who is now the principal of a high school in Rockland County, New York. And we were so proud when she, I have to just say this, joined the teachers in a picket line protesting because they didn't have a contract. And so that she was active in the movement, you know, and they all are. They have a political awareness. My son, he went with our grandchildren walked with us in one of the for Amadou Diallo, was it? And so there's that kind of thing that I greatly appreciate in them, that they have a nice sense of value, you know.
And we recommend that to all families, you know, and, you know, deal with the children. Take them into the struggle with you know. And as far as Cotton Comes to Harlem, you know, I was happy that I directed that. It came along at a time when Hollywood was in serious trouble. They had made a big film called Cleopatra. It cost $30 million. And everybody in Hollywood was crying poor. And United Artists gave Sam Goldwyn the money to make a film called Cotton Comes to Harlem. Sam asked me to direct it. I didn't want to, but he insisted. I did direct it, and it came out. And it so happens that it was a film which we made inexpensively enough so that if only African Americans came to see it, the film would still make a big profit. You know, Raisin in the Sun had not made money as a film. Gordon Parks' The Linear Tree had not made money. But Cotton made money with only the African American community giving it their support. Hollywood, being broke, looked and they saw and said, hey, come in. And they made, for 10 years, you know, we were allowed to make film, which they call blaxploitation film. And then when black folks got tired of that and refused to come, they showed us the back door. Said, well, it was nice of you to come, and maybe some other day we'll get you back again.
That's the blaxploitation, and they brought in a new kind of, what I call a stereotype. Like as Spike said, he could get money to do a hood film, but he couldn't get money to do a family relationship film. Yeah, and that was the story from a number of the young Hollywood producers and directors.
You were doing a great deal during that period. There was Zora Is My Name,
yes.
Countdown at Cassini, Roots, I'm Not Rappaport, and then you wrote My One Good Nerve,
yes,
and you did the court-martial of Jackie Robinson. How many years after you had done the Jackie Robinson story did you do?
I played his mother.
And you.
In those years, much
originally,
later.
you had played
His
Rachel.
wife.
And then I played his wife. I started out
Exactly.
as his wife, and then as his mother. And well,
We were waiting for Ruby to get a chance to play his grandmother.
But I also want to mention Eyes on the Prize.
Yes. Oh, my God.
But in the late 1980s, you met a young film director who had taken the industry by storm when he did a film called She's Gotta Have It. Both of you appeared in several of his films, which meant that a new generation came to know you and love you and respect you. So let's look at another clip.
yes.
In 1989, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee appeared in the controversial Spike Lee film Do the Right Thing.
Hey, you old drunk. What did I tell you about drinking in front of my stoop? Move on, you're blocking my view. You are ugly enough. Don't stare at me. The evil eye doesn't work on me.
Mother, sister, you've been talking about me for 18 years. What have I ever done to you?
You're a drunk fool.
Besides that, the mayor don't bother nobody. And nobody don't bother the mayor, but you. The mayor just tend to his own business. I love everybody. I even love you.
Hold your tongue. You don't have that much love.
One day, you're gonna be nice to me. We may both be dead and buried, but you're gonna be nice. At least civil.
2 years later, in Jungle Fever, Ossie and Ruby give riveting performances as parents of 2 sons, one with a drug problem and the other with a marriage in trouble. Ruby expressed the despair of a mother over her wayward son.
Don't tell your father.
Lucinda, what is he doing in our home?
He is your son, our first child, Gator, and I'm fixing him something neat.
He is not allowed in our home.
But this is his home, too.
How much money did he ask you for? No.
Gator did no such thing. Now, why don't you go in there and listen to Mahalia while I get him something to eat? Now, go on back inside. Go on.
In 1996, Spike Lee dramatized the spirit of the Million Man March in the film Get on the Bus. Ossie Davis played Jeremiah.
No, young blood, your hand's too flat like a pancake, and you have to loosen up your wrist. Don't beat the drum. Make love to it. You know what I mean?
Make love to the
Make love to
like
the drum.
Kathy.
Like yeah, like Kathy. That's right, and easy does it.
Okay.
Slow
and easy.
Easy, steady. Yes, sir. There you go. There you go.
Like this?
Yeah. Oh, that would last you all night long. Yeah.
Tell us about your collaboration with Spike Lee.
Spike was a young man that came to our attention through our son Guy, who said to us, there's a guy that I invested $500 in his film, and guess what? He's paying me back. We were thoroughly shocked by this unorthodox behavior. But upon investigation, it turned out to be true. Spike paid off his investors. And then we got to know him, and he said that there were parts that he wanted Ruby and me to play in his film, and he was true to that too. And he became our role model. No other director has given us so many roles to play.
Yes, and it's very, and that directors that you get paid back, you know, when you work for a percentage. I had not known this to happen but once before in my life, and because our son would say, "Hey, Ma, I got another check from Spike," you know. So he's a man of integrity, and he did so much to open up the unions. Everybody worked for Spike, you know, women, men, white, black, the physically handicapped, the challenged, everybody works for Spike.
And what about that connection between art and politics? Did you find that in your work with Spike?
Yes, we do.
And what he did.
There's an interesting thing, and it constitutes a challenge for us. There are areas where Spike, for all of his brilliance, doesn't have any connection with the culture that came before. When we did Jungle Fever, for example, I did the writing of the part because Spike was not familiar with what went on in the church and how it would work out and various things like that. And even when he came to do the film Malcolm X, I had some reservations even after I saw the film, And I said to myself, and I hope Ruby was listening, I said, I like what Spike has done with the film Malcolm X, but I'd like to come back in 10 years and see what he would do with it then. Spike, in a sense, represents that area in our experience where we have to make absolutely sure that the materials of our lives are available to them. This material that we're doing now, the History Makers, we do this in part to make available to Spike the material he needs to complete his education.
And also I say to complete our education, because I learned a lot from Spike. I learned a lot. I learned a lot because he fought the big boys. He got those unions open because he made them open the unions. You know, so I learned something from Spike, and so that's what made me. And I'm philosophically and all those other ways, we're working together with each other. I thought because he was so young, I just said you this, and he looked like a baby, you know. So the part I was doing as Lucinda, you know, and the boys were named Gator and Flipper and Gator. I said, so I wrote him a letter because I knew he'd appreciate this. If I told him in this series film, he should name those boys Gator and Flipper. And of course, I wrote my ideas of how this boy could be saved. But you know, he was very nice, but he never answered me back. And I learned that we have to cross-fertilize each other in terms of thinking, and that the generations coming in do have something to offer, and the frustrations that they experience are not to be taken lightly, and that we can help, we can change, we can exchange ideas, and we can help save them, you know. I think they're waiting.
Do you think Get on the Bus was,
yes,
in a sense, an attempt to represent that cross-fertilization,
yes,
that conversation across generations?
Oh, I think so. It was Spike's courage to take a current event, you know, and translate it into a film event and present it because he felt that the film would help explain the real events and complete the picture in the public's mind. Now, to use Hollywood in a serious fashion is unheard of almost, but Spike dares to do that. And also, one of the things I'm waiting on Spike for now is Ruby and I have a grandson, and his name is Muta Ali Muhammad, and he too is a filmmaker. So we want him to get in touch with Uncle Spike as soon as he can.
I just have this one more thing to say about Spike, and what he does. He, despite all the odds, Hollywood turned him down, but he made that picture. And he made it getting $1 here and 25 cents here, and from credit cards, and from his mama, and from the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and other sororities and fraternities, and he did it anyhow. He did it. He did. What's it that Malcolm always said? You know, not the best way you can. Anyway, by any means necessary.
Yeah,
40 acres and a mule.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And then, when he had his offering, the establishment, Hollywood, turned around and looked at him and opened the doors to him and a number of other young filmmakers, too.
The two of you have continually reinvented yourselves for generation after generation. And I know that now many people are aware of your involvement in the campaign against the death penalty,
yes,
and the struggle to free Mumia Abu Jamal.
Right.
And it seems as if you're always busy. You're working harder and harder.
Ruby and I are doing what we love to do and the way that we love to do it. We have been tremendously blessed in all areas, not only by God, but by the love of our own people.
Oftentimes, young people and not so young people ask how one becomes an activist. What causes one to develop this commitment to justice and equality and freedom? And I think your lives indicate that it's not about a particular moment. It's about learning to live one's life in a particular way.
Here. Yes.
Learning to live one's life in the struggle.
Yes.
And there's the struggle in a sense because that teaches you what love is, you know. And
so what are some of the contemporary struggles you're interested in? I read an interview with both of you, and I think you were talking about the campaign against globalization.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the campaign against the prison industrial complex.
Oh, yes.
Well, in the 60s, the countries in the third world and in Africa shed colonialism and stood free and clear and raised their flags at the United Nations, equal, presumably, to the rest of humankind. And we all were inspired. We all cried as the old colonial flag came down and the new flags went up. We had such high hopes and expectations that would be a turning point for the good of man and womankind in the world. Now, particularly in Africa, because in Africa at that time, of all the countries there, only 2 were free. Every country in Africa except 2 were colonial colonies. And all of that was over, and Africa was free. What wonderful things were going to happen. And we look today, and we see Africa in despair. And the load on her back now, not the chains of colonialism, but debt which she cannot pay. How did that happen? You know, what went wrong? What did they try to do? And why did what they tried to do not work? What part did we play in what has happened on the African continent now? That in the southern part of Africa, as we speak, you know, people are dying of hunger every day. Now, what part do we play in that? Africa has 2 commodities that she can offer the world: agricultural products and textiles. But Africa cannot sell her agricultural products and textiles on the markets that make the difference. Why? She cannot sell them in Europe. She cannot sell them in America. And as long as the powers that be, the global market, keeps Africa at that disadvantage, she will always be in a position to be beggars. And we cannot afford that the mother continent should be beggars anymore. We must first understand history. We must first understand how it came to pass. We must first understand the instrumentalities by which it came to pass. Then we can fashion a strategy based upon our collective efforts here and with other people all over the world who are looking at the International Monetary Fund, who are looking at the World Bank, who are looking at the World Trade Organization and beginning to ask questions. We need to look to and to learn and to be able to go back into the streets one more time and raise again the flag of struggle. And this time we're going to change it so that Africa will not ever again have to come before the world as a beggar. She is proud. She has produced kings. She's produced queens at one time. She can do it again, but only with our help, and we can only do it if we know, if we study, if we take advantage of the information is there. And there is knowledge to be had. Even our own experiences are eloquent to that point. So let's all study to make ourselves better fighters in the cause of freedom and equality.
So now we really are winding down. I really wish we could continue this fascinating
So do I,
conversation.
actually. Oh, my God, yes.
Could go on for hours and days. But this has been such a wonderful evening. And I'd like to thank you, Ossie and Ruby, for your infinite generosity, for your generosity this evening in sharing your lives with us, for your generosity over the years. This will always be a moment that I will treasure, and I'm sure that for all of us, this is an unforgettable evening. So thank you, Ossie and Ruby. Thank you.
The preceding program was produced by The History Makers, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for this program was provided by Chrysler. Additional funding was provided by AT&T Broadband, the Wyndham Chicago Hotel, ComEd, American Airlines, Walgreens, the Chicago Tribune, Ronald McDonald House Charities, Veranda L. Dickens, and other participating sponsors. To order a VHS copy, please send check or money order for $29.99 to the address below or call 866-914-1900.